great Muhammad Ali, the greatest of them all as far as boxing is concerned, Bob Mateza. You might know him on SABC News. You have a program on this
yes,
channel.
I do. It's a legal program.
Legal. So it's a legal program. So you know a thing or two about legal rights. Also joining us is our bureau chief in the United States of America, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. He joins us via Skype. Sherwin, welcome to Sports on Prime. Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's an afternoon for you, but you're here with us to speak about the great man, Muhammad Ali. Let's start maybe with you before we come to Putumile. The mood in the States since the passing of Muhammad Ali. Can you paint a picture for us ahead of his burial, which in fact I think it has begun, the funeral procession?
I think, yes, the burial has begun, Tabisa, but of course we're all waiting for that momentous occasion where over 15,000 people will gather at a basketball arena in Muhammad Ali's hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. But before I talk about what's been happening today, let me then talk about, as your question refers to, the mood that has been since his passing. I tell you what, the day after Friday night's news broke, the very next day, Al Sharpton tweeted at about 2 a.m. to say, we're going to have an impromptu memorial service in Harlem the very next day. And I tell you, that room was packed with people from the local community and on very, very short notice. And I think that small anecdote, that very small example, really does speak to the legacy, the impact, and the admiration that so many people had for Muhammad Ali and continue to have for him today. But let's take you through what has been happening today. Of course, we're all waiting for this public memorial, some 15,000 people gathering at a local basketball arena where about 300 well-known figures and celebrities have joined in this bid of farewell to the legendary boxing champion, social activist, a humanitarian. I mean, anyone that speaks about Muhammad Ali and only calls him a great boxing champion will really be misrepresenting who he was. He was, of course, also a great humanitarian, a great activist, a messenger for peace at the United Nations. So let's talk about him in all his breadth and all his glory. And among the people there today, former President Bill Clinton is expected to eulogize his good friend, actor, comedian Bill Crystal, will also speak. Also in attendance, Turkey's President Recep Erdogan, King Abdullah of Jordan is there. President Obama not in attendance this afternoon, Tabisa, and we'll forgive him for this, as he's attending his eldest daughter's high school graduation, but did post on Facebook a video really just sharing some anecdotes, some reflections and some artifacts that the champ had personally given to President Obama, including a book titled GOAT, G-O-A-T. That is the title of the book. You know what that stands for?
Yeah.
The greatest of all time.
Well, Sherwin, hold it there a minute. Let's bring Bob Tumile GOAT, the greatest of all time. That basically speaks of who the man is.
No doubt, it was Muhammad Ali was a great symbol for South Africans. Here we are in the 60s. Our leaders are in jail, and Robben Island, some of them are in exile. And here's this black man who actually cares for nobody who is not his color. But although he had great respect for many people, he stands up for his rights and say he is going to be the greatest boxer of the world, and he became that. After winning the gold medal at Rome in 1960, he goes to a restaurant and they refuse to serve him. He takes the medal, say, I have a medal, I represented America, nobody recognizes me. He goes and takes that medal and throws it in the Ohio River. But this IOC has since given him a new one.
Sherwin, I'm sure they're great stories and, plenty to speak about the great man Muhammad Ali. I know you're not there yourself, but I'm sure where you are in New York, there are plans, big screens. I'm sure Times Square will be packed, and as far as people wanting, the interest of the man himself.
Well, this is certainly going to be a memorial with a huge Muhammad Ali personal touch to it. I mean, if you've seen the pictures of the cortege leaving the funeral home and driving through the streets of the city where Muhammad Ali was born and where he grew up, some describe it as really his final victory lap, Tabiso, after, let's say, a major boxing victory, or as Dumile Mateza was referring to, that gold medal in the Olympics. Past the landmarks, like the first place he took a boxing lesson, a drive down Muhammad Ali Boulevard, past the Muhammad Ali Center, his former high school, we understand, and then, of course, this local ceremony where he will be buried in traditional Muslim custom in a private ceremony And then we understand as well the pallbearers were former world heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis and Will Smith, who played Ali in the biopic by the same name in 2001. And what we will witness in these moments ahead of the memorial are the very personal touches from the great man himself. A family spokesperson explaining earlier that Ali sat down with him about 10 years ago, Tabiso, and wanted to ensure that there was a public element to this send-off that we were going to have today. He wanted to afford ordinary folk the opportunity to say goodbye. And that is exactly what is happening today. And I think in many ways, it speaks to the reality that he faced with Parkinson's, the reality that one day this debilitating disease would take him probably ahead of time had he remained healthy, right? And that gave him the opportunity, for use of a better word, to really plan ahead as we will see here today.
Yeah. Dumile, Sherwin touched on something very important there. Apparently, when the tickets for the service were given out to people, less than an hour, that's how long it took for them to be scooped up. And it is going to be packed, and a lot of people will miss it. But that's the kind of person he was. Speaking of the fact that he came to Africa, Zaire back in the days, and that's where probably the greatest fight he's ever had, well, as far as we know in our generation, was fought. Take us through that. As a boxing person.
It was a great fight. A few of South African journalists were out there. Alf Kumalo was there as a photographer, and Leslie Seuma was writing for The World, was there in Zaire, writing for The World. And many of us as South Africans, we really believed this is a man who can liberate us. He was exuding with confidence, and you've never seen in those days, in the 60s, a black man who's exuding with confidence like this young man. Yeah, he's being called up to go and serve in the war in Vietnam. He tells the American government, I'm not going there. I have no fight with no Viet Cong. So they take his title away. After winning the title from Sonny Liston in 1964, he was stripped of his title, and for 3 years he's been walking around without a title. He has a champion without a title. During those days, then his humanity came up. He went around universities talking to students about what is being a human, what is being a black Negro in America or a Negro in America. Here's this man putting his influence into students, and many students have followed him there. It was also then that he moved over and adopted the Islam faith after Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, and became this man who changes his name. I remember one of the boxers, I think it was George Chuvalo, if I'm not mistaken. George Chuvalo kept on calling him Cassius Clay. And he then, as he was throwing a punch on George Chuvalo, said, say my name, say my name. And that's a kind of person who was doing his own commentary in the ring. No need for commentators like us who didn't know what they were talking about. But this man was a great commentator, was a great orator, was a great poet in other also.
Yeah, I mean, we look at that picture now, some of the pictures of that fight, in fact, in Zaire. In fact, this round was the round that he actually knocks George Foreman out. But let me bring you back in here, Sherwi. Here we are, the magnitude of the man, especially in Africa. Do the Americans possibly know the impact that he had on this continent, especially during that fight, Rumble in the Jungle? It is still, I mean, we tried back here in South Africa. I know Rodney Berman brought the likes of, I think it's Lennox Lewis.
And
Rahman. Something of the same, but it just could never fill that space in as far as the Rumble in the Jungle original is concerned.
But it went beyond the boxing. It went beyond the Muhammad Ali or the Cassius Clay in the ring, as so many people will tell you today. I mean, to your question, which is basically, do Americans understand the greatness of this man? And I will answer that unequivocally with a yes. It took them a while, though. As Dumile was referring to, he was stripped of his title. Remember this, he refused to go and fight for the Americans in the Vietnam War. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. 5 years it took to get to the Supreme Court, but he won. And so many people will tell you that it took the American public much longer to come to understand. And of course, he was atrocious, and he will take the brand. This is what Muhammad say. Back it up. And that was the type of man. I was watching an interview that his daughter Layla Ali, who's as you know, a boxer in her own right this morning, and she was talking about the three loves in her father's life. He loved God, he loved himself, and he loved his family and the people. And that is who he was. It took Americans a long time to understand him. He was very outspoken, sometimes misspoke. I mean, you even see that in the statement from President Obama paying tribute, that sometimes he got things wrong. But what people appreciated about him and realized in his later life is that he stuck to his principles. He was unwavering, and it might have taken society longer to come around to understanding those positions, but at the end he was proven right.
Yeah, well, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there, buddy. I know that you've got more things to do. Hopefully, we'll be seeing a package or two from you on the funeral. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, our South African, SABC Bureau of out in New York, United Nations, basically, that's where it's based. But Dumile, final word from you. The man is being laid to rest tonight. What should we remember of the great Muhammad Ali?
Well, what we should remember of great Muhammad Ali, all his quotes, his beautiful quotes. He's got a string of quotes. I was asked to develop a research for the sports program on boxing on Muhammad Ali. I said, no, let's use his quotes. He's got beautiful quotes that are building for many of us. And on top of that, you talk about that George Foreman fight. George Foreman, Muhammad Ali had lost the title. George Foreman has beaten Joe Frazier, has beaten Ken Norton, and he said, I'm going to beat this guy. And he challenged him. And Don King put together the fight. They came to Zaire. You remember that song, In Zaire, In Zaire? That was being played after that. And then he surprised everybody when he came exuding with this confidence he had and said he's going to beat this man up. He was strong and big.
And was speaking about this is my country. I think
exactly. He's speaking about
both of them are foreigners, but
and came into the ring wearing this African kaftan and all of these things. By the way, Foreman was also a gold medal from the Olympic Games long after him, and he beat Foreman. And Foreman said he's never had a beating of his life like that night.
Yeah, well. But Dumile Mateza, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. We run out of time. That's what happens on the show when you're having fun. Thank you very much for speaking to us right here on Sports and Prime as we bid farewell to the great Muhammad Ali. The funeral is just about to take place. In fact, the procession has started. As you heard Sherwin just say, we'll be keeping an eye on that right here on SABC News Channel 404 as the evening goes on, bringing you some live pictures and as far as that's concerned. But before we go, let's take a quick look at some rugby. England, in fact, the South African Select 15 are currently playing against an England Saxons 15 that matches in Bloemfontein. It's been tough for these South Africans. At one stage, I think the score is 24-25 as we speak a little while ago. Let's take a quick look at some of those matches, in fact, at the latest, and as far as that game is concerned, before we continue.
So good.